Why is it so hard for Latino men to talk about their mental health? Why do so many struggle in silence instead of seeking support? Today, we're tackling these questions head-on. Welcome to this powerful discussion on Latino men's mental health. This conversation is about breaking the stigma, challenging outdated expectations, and redefining what strength really means when it comes to mental health. Leading today's conversation is Diego Cortez, marketing manager at Latinx Talk Therapy. He's joined by three incredible bilingual psychotherapists who bring a deep understanding of the challenges many Latinos face when it comes to mental health. Let's meet them. Augusto Celis creates a welcoming space for clients to navigate life transitions, anxiety, and emotional healing, making therapy feel natural and empowering. Dario Zamorano, LSW, specializes in LGBTQ plus mental health, trauma, and identity exploration, using mindfulness and decolonized therapy to foster resilience. Christian Gomez, LPC, supports clients facing stress, relationships, and mood disorders, using CBT and solution-focused therapy to help them regain control of their lives. Through conversations like this, Latinx Talk Therapy aims to make seeking help a sign of strength, not weakness. So whether you're here for yourself or a friend, this conversation is for you. Let's dive in.
Hello everyone, my name is Augusto Celis and I'm a psychotherapist here at Latinx Talk Therapy.
Hi everyone, I am Dario Zamorano and I'm a bilingual psychotherapist here at the Latinx Talk Therapy.
Hello everyone, my name is Christian Gomez and I am a bilingual psychotherapist at Latinx Talk Therapy as well.
Today we're creating a space to talk about something that's really not talked about in our community, which is men's mental health and specifically Latino men. There's still a lot of stigma, especially in Latino men seeking therapy, seeking for help, and we want to change that. My name is Diego Cortez and I'm the marketing manager at Latinx Talk Therapy. This conversation is about breaking down barriers, normalizing seeking help, and highlighting the importance of men's mental health. To help us explore these topics, we're here with our incredible therapists in our team. So we're gonna start with the first question. It's more about personal growth. What lessons have you learned from your mental health journey that you think could inspire others or help others?
I think for me, my mental health journey has changed over time, over the years. Initially, it was very focused on dealing with some stressors that I was going through during my teenage years. And over the years, that has evolved, I can say, into just learning how to set boundaries better for myself and learning how to better communicate and express myself in different relationships in my life, whether that's with my partner, with friends, or with family. And I can just imagine that it'll continue to transform, as I continue down my own mental health journey as well.
I think for me, it's still a journey that's kind of being, written, revised and everything. Early on, I think when setting goals and trying to reach a certain benchmark as a teenager in high school, I always had tests to kind of validate my worth. I always had school projects to validate my worth, people to validate my worth, relationships. And I never really went to put the effort to center on what those things meant to me. And so trying to rebuild a relationship with the way that I set goals and the way that I reach them is really important for my personal growth, because if I try to hold on to a goal that's unrealistic, then I get a sense of failure when I can't reach it. So being flexible with that, being understanding with my own needs, and finding a way to get there in a way that means a lot to me is something that I still kind of am working on, even as a therapist, as a person, as a human being.
Yeah, so for me, I think the most difficult part was just accepting that there is room to change. Growing in a community down there in Texas, it was very stigmatized to even talk about mental health, and I think that's where my journey started. And I'm just blessed to be able to be an advocate for it, to break away from my community and be like the odd duckling, right? And I'm still learning. It's a journey on my end. I love being realistic, and I think that's what helps the most, especially to bring that within clients. And I think that's what most people ask for, right? Just be authentic, realistic, and above all, something that helps, at least on my end when it comes to mental health, is setting realistic goals as well. And yeah, like I said, I'm still learning, and it's a good journey so far.
And that's something I can definitely share on this question, because my mental health journey probably started 3 years ago when I decided to start therapy. And at the beginning, it was more for anxiety, depression, and it branched out to more personal growth. So it was more about learning about myself, learning about things in my culture that maybe hinder my growth or might limit me. So that was very useful because I learned a lot about myself. I learned what are my weaknesses, my strengths, things that I want to change, things that are difficult to change. And it's been a journey, and I love it because it's a journey that you're constantly learning about yourself. I love learning about different skills that I can implement in my life, improving my relationships with family, friends, loved ones. I think it's so beneficial because therapy, you can tailor it to all about you. So about your goals. There's this belief that therapy is about going to talk about your emotions, right? Or to cry. And it could look like that, but it's not all about that. So it's very important to break those misconceptions, I think, about going to therapy. And we'll move on to the next question. What are the biggest misconceptions that Latino men have about therapy?
Oh man, that's a good one. So I can speak from self-experience, like growing up, when it came to therapy, at least on my end, when it comes to my family, it was more of like, oh, there's really something wrong with this kid. And that was just the idea of therapy, that it was linked to this idea of a person being really mentally ill.
Especially in our community.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, that was just fed by the stigma behind that, especially within men. We're in a culture that we're taught to suck it up, ponte a trabajar, get busy, do something productive. That's all you need. You have too much free time on your mind right now, or on your life. And it was just those misconceptions that kind of continue to feed that, and it was just difficult to break away from that, especially since you're so accustomed to hearing that.
Yeah, to like piggyback off of that, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that we have to start therapy as soon as we, find that things are falling apart, right? When individually, right, we have to be like seriously mentally ill. There has to be something totally wrong with us in relationships. Things have to be totally like ruptured and broken and like irreparable, and that a third person has to come in and clear things up. In families, it has to be like secrets come out and everybody is like at each other's throats. And I don't think you have to wait. You don't have to wait for there to be a problem. You can start as soon as you notice that there are things that are going up, that are not going our way. In relationships, you don't have to be in relationships to go seek out couples therapy. You can be friends. You can be at different stages of life when it comes to seeking out therapy individually. So there's a whole different like set of expectations in terms of like men seeking out therapy that I think would be useful to just like reevaluate. You don't have to wait. You don't have to have a problem. You can just be wanting to work on something, and we can start from there.
Yeah, and I think going back to something that you mentioned, Diego, as well, is that something that I hear a lot is sometimes there's this expectation that we're gonna come into therapy and there's gonna be a bunch of crying, talking about our emotions and exploring our feelings, right? And one, that's totally okay if that's what it is, right? But it's also not all focused on that, right? Everyone is different. Everyone has different goals, and we have conversations. We explore different topics in life, what's going on, right? I know personally, right, that just having to focus on our emotions can be scary, right? So there is some of that, but it doesn't all revolve around that either, right? And on top of that, another thing that I often hear is the idea that we go into therapy and we have this person that's sitting across from us that's there to judge us or to tell us how we're supposed to live life or how to fix things, right? And that's not necessarily the case, right? We're there to have conversation and work as a team to explore, hey, what can I do to meet these goals, right? So that's something that I know I've encountered with myself, and then even in working with some of my clients as well.
Yeah, and piggybacking on that, I hear a lot about siento que alguien me va a regañar, and I think maybe that comes in our culture, right? There's this belief that, oh, van a ir a regañarnos o cosas así, authority, right?
Right.
So I hear those conversations too. I hear that they picture this image of either crying or sometimes laying on the sofa, that based on movies, things they've seen. Mm-hmm.
I've never had any of my clients lay on the sofa, right? But that's a good point.
And that's a lot of misconceptions that I see a lot. That it's very common that they picture this image because it's a room. Sometimes if they're doing it in person, where there's a mystery of what conversations happen in therapy, right? And I think that mystery creates a lot of misconceptions as well. Or if it's online, it's very personable, right? It's very personal. It's only that conversation is between two people, and there's a lot of mystery of what those conversations look like. Can you talk about what those conversations look like?
Yeah, and that one's a bit tricky to answer just because we're all different, right? So we all go to therapy for different reasons. But overall, I would say that in these conversations, it's a back and forth. One person doesn't take control, right? Again, it's a team, and there's a lot of exploring. We can play a role of offering some guidance if that's what someone needs, right? But again, it's tailored to every person, right? But what I will say is that easier said than done, but sit back, try to relax, right? And it's just another conversation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, a lot of our sessions are talk therapy, like it's in our name too. So oftentimes session does look like a person sitting across from another and walking alongside them in terms of like what's going on in their life, practicing skills, integrating that, getting good at, having hard emotions and difficult challenges that come up in their life. I also think part of, aside from like processing verbally and, integrating skills, there's a lot of opportunity to like get in touch with like, your body and like the way it's showing up, the stress. We oftentimes don't have like the language to describe emotions, much less even the language to describe the way that stress lives inside of our body. So having the opportunity to even just like tune to that moment is something that I truly like celebrate with clients. And even in the spirit of talking about celebrating, we celebrate wins, we celebrate losses, we celebrate ending relationships, we celebrate a lot of things. So it's not always a serious and somber topic, but it does depend.
Yeah, and I think both of you got very good points when it comes to therapy. And something I did want to add was that at times I get a lot of clients where they get this misconception or idea that they need to arrive to therapy and every session needs to be psychoeducation. They need to take away something important. And I like to remind them that at times treat this session as an hour for you to reflect, to self-care, because I get it, we're all busy. We all don't really have the time to give at least some minutes to ourselves to really sit down and talk about what is hurting us, what might be stressing us, and so forth. And it's just a neat reminder that I like to bring and hopefully continue to bring to other clients, because the session is your hour. It's your time to take care for yourself and care for those needs.
And we can segue to the next question, which is, why do you think it's particularly difficult for Latino men to open up about their emotions or seek help for their mental health?
Oh man, yeah, that's a good one. Again, I bring back just the stigma that there is, and I think within Hispanic men, like the roles that you're grown to kind of fit in. Again, not to speak about your emotions, respect family boundaries, don't share secrets, don't be vulnerable, and I think that's the most difficult and the most the biggest issue that we struggle with. But yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to say here because, I mean, there's a lot that keeps us from showing up in session. But one of the things that I've noticed along the way has been having, preconceived, like, gendered expectations of, like, how to be hardened in moments of vulnerability, right? How to shut down when you're having a specific type of way that you're feeling, and having a history of, like, not having that feeling, that holding of that feeling be validated or be like extended compassion to, right? So if I'm feeling anxious, if I'm feeling anger, if I'm feeling sadness, oftentimes we have been conditioned to hold these feelings back because it wasn't safe to hold them in front of other people. And because of conditioning and because of living life that way, it just becomes a habit to not want to share. It feels weird, it feels uncomfortable, it feels all types of things. I think cultural expectations too, right? What does it mean for me as like a Latino man trying to prioritize my needs over other people's, right? What does that say about me for needing to ask for help when no one else can? I'm supposed to be the person that brings in the money. I'm supposed to bring in the security, the confidence, all of that. But what happens in moments where all of that is depleted and I'm not left with anything left for myself? So I think a lot of that has to do with the way that we set up these expectations and the way that those expectations set us up to get in the way of our own lives.
And just to piggyback off of that as well is with these expectations, right? I think being vulnerable is hard enough within itself, right? Now, if we think about Latino men specifically, right, there's these expectations, social norms, cultural norms, right, that men are supposed to be strong, right? And I think over the years, strong has turned into, well, that means you have to deal with everything on your own, and we don't ask for help, right? That includes our emotions, right? And seeking out therapy is a form of seeking out help or some type of support, right? So I think it all ties back to what we learned and what we continue to learn as well, right? So there's this connection, this idea that asking for help, asking for support, showing our emotions, being vulnerable equals weakness, right? And that's just not true, right? That's just simply not true. And again, asking for help, showing our emotions isn't about being weak, strong, isn't about gender. It's simply about being human, right? We all have emotions, right? Now, how are we going to choose to manage them and express them and just deal with them throughout our life?
Yeah. And we talked about stigma, right?
Yeah.
So how can we address the stigma surrounding mental health in the Latino community and create more supportive environment?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that we're heading in the right direction, right? Compared to even just a few years ago, we still have a lot of work to do, right? But I like to think that we're heading in the right direction. But I think one thing is just having conversations around mental health in general, right? I think it's awesome that we're having these types of conversations in these types of spaces, but I think it's equally as important to have these conversations outside of these spaces, meaning at home with our friends, at work if it's okay to have those conversations, right? Because the idea would be with those conversations is to normalize our mental health, right? So again, having conversations around mental health in general, I think would be a big step to help us reach our goal of, hey, it's okay to seek out mental health services.
Yeah, and on top of having conversations about like mental health and having the spaces is also like having the access to the like right information, right? It gets very easy to like go down a rabbit hole in TikTok or Twitter, or Instagram, and find these mental health experts, so-called, and like tell you about your diagnosis if you put a finger down for XYZ, and it gets very easy, right, to access these kinds of things because it's just there. Therapy's expensive. Therapy's a commitment, and so improving our mental health doesn't only happen in the four walls of this like room. It happens with family members. It happens with our loved ones. It happens with people who, you know, have that lived experience, right? And lived experience is knowledge as well, but also getting in touch with, you know, professionals who have like who do this, right? We go to school, we're trained, and we're ready to kind of be there with you. That, and I also think, being honest about the way that we reach these different, I guess, like sources of information, right? How willing are we, you know, to do the research? How willing are we to be curious about the kind of things that we like read about? And also like giving ourselves space for like not knowing, right? Like if I really truly do not know about XYZ, then that's okay, right? Maybe that means that I get to like learn more about it by reaching out to somebody who does, somebody who gets it.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really good point when it comes to finding resources. I think that's one of the biggest issues because I've seen it. I've experienced it within family members where exactly they head to TikTok or online, and there's a huge rabbit hole because for starters, if you already feel lost, confused, whatever it may be, I think it's so easy to just reach out online, Google whatever your symptoms is. Whatever your symptoms are, my bad, and just go with that. Go with whatever some random guy posted on TikTok or on Reddit, and just fully believe it. Because again, you're in such a vulnerable spot that you'll take any answer that kind of resonates with you, and then what happens is that for starters, you don't pinpoint what is the real cause, the root cause for whatever may be eating you up, and second of all, you're just not really focusing on what you should be at the moment, which should be seeking for a professional to assess you and see what could be explored. But again, the most difficult part is that when it comes to resources, it's expensive, and yeah.
To add on to that, no, you're right, and like. There's like peer education groups, there's like support groups, there are, different resource directories that we can reach out to. There's different flavors of resources like suicide prevention and proactive awareness for that. So it doesn't always have to be something that feels so like vague and something that we always have to demystify. It can be something as simple as like having a space where people can talk about the same problem, or having a space where there are different people that talk about different problems. So yeah, like getting in tap with, I think Chicago is just like a very wonderful place to be in terms of like having like an abundance of resources. And I think we're privileged enough to like be able to like have like even just like a block, go look in the next block and see like, oh, here's a doctor's office, here's a library, here's this and that. So like really truly like tapping into the resources that are there for us.
Yeah, even Latinx Talk Therapy, we offer free therapy groups for clients as well. And then going back to what we talked about how therapy looks like, what are some unexpected benefits you've seen Latino men who decide to start therapy?
I think one of the things that there's so many, there are so many, but like one of the things that I like to share with my clients, regardless of how they identify, is the opportunity to build a better relationship with the way that they have certain emotions. Like I word it that way because oftentimes we come into therapy thinking that we are going to feel better. And sometimes that we're hit with a reality that feeling better isn't the only way to live life. Sometimes we have to feel sad. Sometimes we have to feel, angry or frustrated or anxious. And that's not because like these emotions shouldn't be there, but it's something like you said earlier, Christian, that these emotions are human. They're what make us who we are. And so rather than trying to eliminate them, we build a better relationship with the emotions that we have. And in terms of like processing, outside of processing, there's like the skills that we learn, right? This idea of like neuroplasticity, where we put in the reps by gradually exposing ourselves to certain situations or certain conversations. We rewire our brains by getting closer and closer to the topic that is really hard to talk about, or to the disagreement that truly like activates us. And the more that we practice, it's kind of like going to the gym and putting reps. Our brain becomes more flexible, our thoughts become more flexible, our reactions become more flexible, and oftentimes flexibility offers room for making mistakes and being willing to learn from them. So that's an unexpected benefit as well.
Yeah, I'm really glad you pointed out the fact that life isn't about just being happy all the time, because that's just not realistic, right? But I think something else I'll add to that is just overall decreased stress levels, right? Because therapy can also be a space where we come and we're able to just let out maybe things that have been building up throughout the week, throughout the month, or maybe even throughout years, right? So it can give us a sense of just relief, like a weight off our shoulders, right? So just again, the idea of generally feeling less stressed, right? And that goes back to some other things that we touched on, which is, hey, I don't have to do this all on my own, right? Or going back to, you know what, I'm not alone in this that I'm struggling with, right? There's other people who may be facing similar situations, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, and, I like what Dario and Christian mentioned about, especially when it comes to feelings, not only being okay with them, but understanding that it's okay to cry, it's okay to be sad, to be angry. It's very humanistic. It's very healthy for you. What might be an issue is what comes after that, right? And through therapy, that's something that we can definitely explore and manage. And something that I always bring up to the table whenever I do have sessions. It's like, if you need to cry, just cry, let it all out. That's what I'm here for. Maybe combat maladaptive behaviors or patterns that they weren't able to recognize before. And I think that in itself, just being able to be more aware about maybe minute details. We're so busy that at times we don't even have a minute or two to recognize that this little details. For example, someone cut you off, whatever, you kind of filter it out, you move on throughout your day. You wanted to go eat, but your boss told you you can't at that time. And I think over the days, those little things start stacking up, and then how that shows up to you later on the day is stress, migraine, headaches, maybe you lash out because you don't know what the root cause for your bad day is. And yeah, I think just being able to at least recognize that is amazing, right? It's something that comes from therapy, among many things.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I just want to add something that you made me think of right now that I've also heard a lot in working with clients, more specifically male clients, right? That being able to recognize maybe some maladaptive behaviors that we didn't even know were there, right? So something that, through being able to recognize and working on those behaviors, right? If that's something that we want to do. Another thing I've heard a lot is this has allowed them to show up in a different way in their relationships, thinking more romantic relationships, right? So being able to, again, express themselves better, right? And then that leads into more productive communication, more productive conversations with their partner, with their spouse, whoever it may be, right? So that's another one that I've noticed come up a lot in working with my male clients.
I think this is bringing me to the idea of like values too when it comes to dealing with relationships. Like what is important to me now may not be important to me. What was important to me in the past may not be important to me now. And that might be a conflict that I have with my partner or my family member or that kind of stuff. So like things like values are like things that matter to us at a certain point in life and that guide our behavior. And so things like family, community, prosperity, financial stability, all of these things. And it's worth like understanding like what are the moments where those values present themselves and how can I use the stress that I experience to create like a point where I get to decide if I want to move towards my value or if I want to move away towards my value. And oftentimes we come thinking that family is super important and love is super important and like financial stability is super important, but then we neglect the value of like our emotional stability, right? Because all of these things are important and they all get to be important, but like it's choosing when and how we move towards those values. That and also just like updating relationships. Maybe sometimes like I'm in the dating scene and I'm dealing with the slew of like swiping left and swiping left and swiping left and being able to understand that like if I don't need to be in a relationship, then I don't need to be in a relationship. And so, right, like updating my relationship to relationships is something that is an unexpected benefit when it comes to like navigating mental health with a therapist at Next Talk Therapy.
Yeah, just to talk a little bit about that, I think therapy, what allows is explore those beliefs and those values and see if it's right for you, right? Because they were probably taught by our parents, grandparents, family, and that might not work for us now. We live in a different country that maybe they were brought up. We live in a different generation, different technology. So those values might change. Those beliefs might change depending on your situation. And we can segue to the next question is how can different types of therapy, individual, relationship, family, group, can help men navigate their emotions and strengthen their relationships?
I think I guess it all depends on the setting that you step into. So like individual therapy, obviously you can tailor your treatment plan. You can work with your therapist to kind of like focus on you and the way that you show up in life. With like relationship therapy, we're working with two people as a client or maybe more than that. And so it's like centering ourselves and our goals with another person that is important to our lives, right? Whether that's conflict management or communication strategies or like discernment, deciding whether or not this relationship is worth like having, or how can we de-escalate it or rearrange those relationship dynamics to work for the both of us or for the however many of us. For family therapy, right, that kind of similar thing, right? Working systemically with mom, dad, or maybe blended families and intergenerational trauma, and like with group therapy, which is my favorite, working with, I guess, different like group like needs, right? Understanding that there are other people that are walking in different walks of life, and deciding whether or not that is like good for me to step into that space and to be vulnerable with other people who are deciding to be vulnerable with me. That's where my thought is gonna end right there. But anybody, yeah, I'll toss it to you.
Yeah, I think, you brought up some really good points, especially thinking about couples, right? Couples therapy. And I think if we think more on the individual side, I think a way that individual therapy could be helpful in being able to work on those relationships in the client's life is kind of like you mentioned, Dario, earlier around being able to learn different skills, right, that we can add to our tool belt, right? So different tools that we can add to our tool belt, whether that's learning how to better set boundaries, right? Because if we're too passive with our boundaries, then there's going to be an unbalance in the relationship, right? If we are too aggressive with our boundaries, that may cause a different type of unbalance, right? So learning to set boundaries that we're able to respect ourselves, respect the other person, learning communication skills, whether that's I statements, right? And learning, okay, what's the best way that I can say this to increase the chances that the person I'm having a conversation with, we have a productive conversation, right? Almost like, how can I meet the person halfway, right? So there are different ways that we can just focus on learning tools, skills. If we are more in tune with our own emotions, then we will be able to better express what we're thinking and what we're feeling, right? It's really hard to express to someone else what we're feeling or what we're thinking if we ourselves can't even really understand what we're feeling and thinking, right? So by being more in tune with ourselves, we can better explain that to someone else, which is just going to, at the end of the day, improve the communication, which is then going to improve the relationship as well.
Yeah, both of you guys brought up a very good point when it comes to each type of therapy. And just coming out fresh from doing a group therapy here at Latinx, they're free. I think aside from each having each having its own benefits, the one from group, not only do I believe it's a good start, right? It's very empowering to, at the bare minimum, have someone show up and share maybe an experience they have, and being able to resonate with that and being like, oh, sabes que yo también estoy batallando con eso, can be so powerful, right? Just being able to relate to someone, knowing that there's someone that is going through the same struggles as you, is so beneficial, and being able to bring that up in the session as well, and having a therapist navigate through it with the group. I think, like I said, it's just a very good start, and yeah, each therapy does have its benefits. Do the research, whatever you feel might be more tailored to you. Ask, it's free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and our final question, just to wrap up, what advice would you give to a Latino man who's hesitant to seek help or talk about mental health?
I think, like I ended the last question, is ask. Just make the first step, and just be aware that we're the ones to make the change, right? I don't think anyone can preach enough. You can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? I think this is something that's in us to kind of stray away from our culture and do what's right for us, right? Something that matters to us above anything else. I think it's mental health, and just do it right. Ask around, get the right therapist that tailors to your needs. I think that's the biggest takeaway. I've heard bad experiences of people doing their first session, and then nada que ver. It was something that just wasn't good for them. They didn't do enough research, and that just painted a bad image towards their first experience when it comes to therapy. So yeah, on my end is just ask. After you get your information, go ahead and just do it. Yeah, I don't think you lose anything. You just gain from it.
Yeah, I think like with any relationship that we may have in life is like take the risk. Not only taking the first step, but taking the risk of like being in a relationship with someone who is going to be there for you, who is meant to have the skill set to create a container for you and only you. yeah, do your research, read your therapist bios. If you want to fall down a rabbit hole of like what kind of approaches work best for you, like I invite you to be prepared to like ask your therapist questions, because they will guide you. Even if y'all are not the right fit for one another, they will guide you to the right direction. Whether it's like referrals or seeking out like group therapy or referring you to a couples therapist, you can find out with talking to a therapist whether or not that works for you. And I think the other thing that I'll add to that is you get to decide when, at least with this level of care and with this setting, you get to decide when to say no to therapy. You get to decide when therapy is too much. You get to decide, and you get to bring that up to the therapist, and they can work with you to decrease how many times you have therapy throughout the week, whether to make it more or less. So really, it is taking a risk with, a return of investment as well for your mental health.
Yeah, I think to that, I mean, I don't think I have much to add, right? I think you two hit the nail on the head with that one. I know firsthand that taking that first step can be very difficult. It can be scary, right? But like you two said, right? The client has the power, right, to say, you know what, I don't want to come back, right? Or yes, I do want to come back, or I want to find a different therapist to work with, right? So it's not like you're going to be locked in a room and you're locked in there, right? No, you have that power, right? What do you have to lose, right? What do you have to lose, right? At the end of the day, there's, I think, the risk-reward ratio is in the favor of the client, right? So give it a try.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this will wrap up our conversation. I want to thank every one of you for coming and showing up. I know you have a busy schedule, and I really appreciate making the time. And if this conversation resonated with anybody, take the first step, right? What do you have to lose, like you said, right? And you can call us or reach out to latinxtalktherapy.com and make your first appointment, or you can talk to our client care coordinator and just have that conversation if you're just exploring that thought, and just have more information that could probably help with maybe the anxiety, the fear, because obviously there's some type of fear or anxiety in some people, right? And it can be scary, and it's okay to be scared, right? Absolutely. But taking the first step, I think, could help a lot of people, especially Latino men who don't take that first step.
Latinx Talk Therapy is committed to providing culturally sensitive, bilingual mental health care to our community. Through conversations like this, we aim to make seeking help a sign of strength, not weakness. If you connected with anything discussed today and are considering therapy, Latinx Talk Therapy has a team of over 20 bilingual therapists ready to support you. Whether you'd like to work with one of today's speakers or find the therapist that best fits your needs, we're here to help. You can book an appointment online or call us 312-620-7551 to get started. Therapy is for you, your growth, and your well-being. If you need support, Latinx Talk Therapy is here for you. Estamos aquí para ayudar.